Hello everybody, I'm Rene Ramos, director of the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives, and this is Rewind, the show that looks back on Florida's past with historic film and video. It's time for another trip back into the past, so sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Rewind.
WTVJ News presents FYI, for your information, another in a series of special reports. Tonight's program, Miami, city of a million faces.
The faces you have just seen belong to Miamians. Florida's climate and opportunity for the future are bringing people here by the dozens each day. People who hang up their overcoats and become permanent residents. As the population grows, so do the problems attendant to more people buying more homes and driving more cars. This program tonight will present a cross-section of the people of Miami, city of a million faces. The exact number of people now living here is a matter of conjecture, but unofficial guesses place the figure at no less than 1 million for Dade County. The 1960 door-to-door federal census will begin here April 1st. Some 900 field interviewers will complete their job during April, and the official count will be known before the year is out. The fabled growth of Greater Miami is closely paralleled to that of New York City in that the majority of its inhabitants originally came from somewhere else. There is, however, one marked difference. The settlers of New York claimed foreign countries as their source of origin. Only 10% of Miami's population is foreign-born. 70% come from other places within the boundaries of the United States. There's a statue in New York Harbor which doubtlessly impressed the many immigrants as they neared their newfound homeland. Lady Liberty jutting into the heavens like a huge skyscraper, a biblical doctrine in one hand, a torch of freedom in the other. Miami, too, has its symbol of a new birth, the Florida sun, hanging like a huge torch above us all, radiating warmth and a promise of good health. How did Miami become the great core that drew so many people to it, just as a magnet attracts chips of metal? 3 modern-day South Florida landmarks stand as reminders of those early days just before the turn of the century, when an infant peninsula received its first pair of baby shoes. A busy Miami thoroughfare was named for Henry M. Flagler, the empire builder, whose Florida East Coast Railroad inched along slowly down the Sunshine State. But the end of the line came at West Palm Beach because Flagler was so impressed with the beauty there. He thought a further southward movement would prove a waste of time. The causeway at 36th Street, tribute to another great pioneer, Julia D. Tuttle. It was she who persuaded Flagler to extend his railroad to Miami. And here's how she did it. These are orange blossoms, and they figured prominently in the big Florida freeze of 1894. Crops and groves lay dying as far south as Fort Lauderdale, but the Miami area had not suffered. Mrs. Tuttle sent Flagler a spray of orange blossoms packed in wet cotton. The sight so impressed him that he pushed the railroad right on through to Miami. From then on, the blossoms, as well as the area, continued to bloom prosperously. Let's go back 35 years and see how metropolitan Miami's population swelled from that time to the present. And note the dramatic leap which occurred following the Second World War. 1925, 111,000. 1930, 143,000. 1935, up to 181,000. 1940, 268,000. 45, 315,000. And then it climbed in 1950 to 495,000. In 1955, 704,000. and then the big jump to 1960 with 1 million people. Using the same years, let's take a look at the population growth by area. In the following film, each dot represents 10,000 people. In 1925, Greater Miami's population had taken seed in only 3 cities: Miami, Miami Beach, and Coral Gables. The Gables had barely 1,000 people. 1930 saw the cities of Hialeah, Miami Springs, and South Miami sprout up from out of the wilderness. Anything beyond a 30-block radius of downtown Miami was no man's land. 1935, the population continues to spread. More and more people flock to suburban communities. Biscayne Park, Miami Shores Village, North Miami, and North Miami Beach begin to claim their share of inhabitants. 1940, a northward expansion is evidenced. North Miami grows to nearly 2,000 persons. The cities of Surfside and Golden Beach assume their place on the Gold Coast. In 1945, the existing areas continue to grow, but Dade County's southwest section is still relatively undeveloped. South Miami has a population approaching 3,000. Few people, however, live far from the highway, but the various sections begin to fill in, and by 1950, some 110,000 residents are occupying the unincorporated areas of Dade County. Miami alone now has 250,000 people. 1955, and all portions of Dade are now spoken for. In the past 5 years, a 42% population increase has been witnessed. 2 out of every 5 persons who settle in Florida are coming into Dade County. 1960, and it's difficult to see the map for the dots. Almost no section of Dade is now considered far out. Housing development and shopping centers, now considered fairly common, have reduced the necessity for living close in. 1 million faces composing the giant portrait of Greater Miami. Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they do? I'll be back with those answers after this time out.
And now, here is Noah Tyler for Chase Federal.
I have in my hand a banknote known in Venezuela as a bolivar. Simon Bolivar was the George Washington of his country, and this currency unit is named in his honor. This is just one of the many, many treasury notes used by member countries of the United Nations that you can see on display at Chase Federal Savings. The colorful exhibit is on loan from the Chase Manhattan Bank of New York. And we invite you to see it at the 41st Street branch of Chase Federal tomorrow through Friday. Next week at the 75th and Collins Avenue branch, and the week of March 28th at the Surfside office. To most of us who are familiar with only United States dollars, the different shapes and sizes and varied designs of these currencies may come as something of a surprise. Many of the folks who do business at Chase have used similar monies from this display in the faraway lands they represent. The money provided for such romantic travel didn't come from a sudden inheritance necessarily. These folks simply opened a Chase Federal Savings account and added to it regularly. You'll be surprised as how quickly the dollars grow. And remember, your savings earn a generous 4% compounded semi-annually at Chase. Your dreams of travel to faraway places, or old age security, or for just everyday things around the house, are as close to reality as your determination to open a Chase Federal Savings account. Why don't you save as thousands save, and say as thousands say, for my money, it's 4% at Chase Federal.
1 million people. It's impossible to present all of them. It's even more of an impossibility to mention each during a half-hour program. But there is a way of handling this problem. Occupations fall into a number of categories, and the various places that one might hail from can also be broken down into groups or classifications. We've chosen 10 Miamians to represent all of us. This is their story and our story too. Out of Dade's total labor force of nearly 427,000, about 35,000 are employed in the fields of transportation, communications, and public utilities. Representative of his fellow workers is Edward Zuniga. an airlines mechanic. Ed has been living in Miami with his wife and family for the past 2.5 years. He's 25 years old, and when he's standing, measures a well-proportioned 6'3". Ed came here from Eagle Pass, Texas, and helps make up the more than 2% of our population that originally lived in the west, south, central states. 34-year-old Lydia Irizarry works in a laundry. She and 66,000 other Miamians are engaged in the type of job that comes under the general grouping of service and miscellaneous. Lydia moved here 12 years ago from Phoenix, Arizona. She's divorced, has 2 children, and lives with her parents. Arizona is one of the mountain states which, coupled with the Pacific coast, claims some 20,000 Miamians, or just 2% of our million. All statistical data in this report was obtained from the Dade Development Department and the Florida State Employment Service. Agricultural work provides a living for another segment of our population, 7,400 to be exact. Dade County offers the crop grower an opportunity to raise things here that wouldn't stand a chance of survival in any other part of the country during the winter months. This makes for a year-round market. 45-year-old Roy Doubly, father of 3 children, has been a farmer all his life. He was born in Lake City, Florida, and came to Miami in 1950. About 8% of our permanent residents are from the South Atlantic states, taking in the East Coast from Delaware right on down to Florida. Finance, insurance, and real estate fall into another broad classification of occupations. 24-year-old Sue Rick, a bank teller, represents nearly 20,000 people engaged in these businesses. Sue has been in Miami for 3 years, is married and the mother of a boy who is also 3. She feels this is the perfect spot in which to rear her children. Sue is originally from Duluth, Minnesota, and almost 4% of all Miamians hail from that portion of the country, which also includes the states of Iowa, Missouri, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. The greatest percent of Miamians are in what is known as the trades. They buy or sell things wholesale or retail, and they number about 90,000. 38-year-old Marvin Tanner sells men's apparel. He used to do the same kind of work back in Queens, New York. Marvin moved here 5 years ago because one of his 2 children, a 13-year-old boy, was going deaf. The doctor prescribed a warm climate. Marvin picked Miami, and his son has since regained his hearing. What's more, Marvin says he's doing better business here than he did back home. The New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area has provided more Miamians than has any other section. They comprise nearly 27% of our 1 million population. There are 35,000 government workers in Miami on the federal, state, and local levels. Mailman Robert Crockett is one of them. The husky 38-year-old letter carrier has been living in Miami since he was 1 year old. Bob was born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, much like the famous Davy Crockett, who bears the same last name. Bob's birthplace was Waverly, about 65 miles west of Nashville, and he doesn't disclaim the possibility of a kinship with a renowned Indian fighter. Bob's parents fell in love with Miami during a vacation here and kissed the mountain country goodbye. Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi account for almost 3% of Miami's populace. The native Miamian is not as rare as many people believe. About 20% of our population was born right here. 23-year-old Margaret Jones is one of them. Margaret attended Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School and is a graduate of Booker T. Washington High. Some 118,000 Negroes now live in Greater Miami. Margaret works as a maid, and there are roughly 21,000 residents employed as domestic servants. Margaret has never left Miami. She says she doesn't know what snow looks like and hopes she never finds out. She thinks she'd probably freeze to death if she ever went north. William Buzard and 64,000 other Miamians are self-employed. Bill is a barber, but the category is wide enough to include all professional and lay people who are responsible to no one but themselves. Too much snow, ice, and cold weather drove the 54-year-old grandfather to Miami from Columbus, Ohio. 19% of our inhabitants come from his neck of the woods, which also includes Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Bill has been here for 15 years now and says he doesn't foresee any changes being made. Dade County is constantly growing as a manufacturing center. Industries of one sort or another currently employ close to 43,000 workers. You're looking at a factory which produces aluminum awnings. Lilia Rivera's job is to help turn them out. Lilia was born in Havana, Cuba, but is now a naturalized U.S. citizen. She, her husband, and 9-year-old daughter have been living in Miami for the past 3 years. About 10% of Miami's million are of foreign extraction. Why does Lilia like Miami? She says the climate here is just like Cuba. A big slice of Miami's labor force is taken by workers in the construction field. 27,000 localites call this business their business. 36-year-old James Falls has been living here for 7 years. He likes building things in Miami because he doesn't have to worry about cold weather putting him out of a job. Jimmy is the father of 2 children, a boy age 4, a girl age 10. His daughter's bronchial condition was the cause of his leaving Boston, Massachusetts. Jimmy and his family helped compose the 5% of New Englanders who now call the Miami area their home. Now let's review briefly the places from which Miamians come. 20% are natives of Dade County. Another 10% were born outside the country. And the other 70% originally lived within the United States borders. Most Miamians, as you see, come from the northeast quarter of the nation. New England, the Mid-Atlantic, and east-north central states account for approximately 1/2 of our permanent population. Another big area lies in the South Atlantic section, almost 8.5%. Miami, however, seems to hold little lure for persons living in the Midwest to far west. From Tennessee westward across the Great Plains, beyond the Rockies, and up the Pacific coast, the combined number of people who headed for Miami adds up to a figure of less than 11%. Well, those are the people, each apparently working at the job he knows best. But such is not the case for every Miamian. As in all things, problems arise and have to be coped with. When a person is told by his doctor to move to a warmer climate, he usually does so, whether a position in his particular field is available or not. To defy such an order is in many cases tantamount to inviting death. And so we find people working here below their normal status, such as an architect employed as a draftsman. And we find them engaged in completely disassociated work. The following examples are true ones. At present, there is a man employed as a janitor who back home was the superintendent of schools. A former engineer is working as an attendant in a service station. At one time, a doctor was engaged as a clerk in the Florida State Employment Service. And a man who once owned a stable of 20 race horses is currently driving a taxi cab as a means of livelihood. But there is at least one consolation. These people had jobs. Latest figures show almost 18,000 Dade County residents unemployed. Well, what about the future? Will that count increase or diminish? Some optimistic words on that subject now from Darcy O'Meara, manager of the Florida State Employment Commercial Office.
It appears that our employment will continue to match our growth in population. The great growth in population naturally increases the demand for housing, for goods and services, which in turn creates the need for more people, more jobs. This has been borne out by our very favorable percentage of unemployment, a percentage that's much more favorable than the national percentage and has been for years. We may well, indeed, face a situation in the coming years where rather than looking for jobs for people, we may have to be looking for people for the jobs.
So much for employment. Well, now, what about our schools? Too often we fail to recognize that children are people too. The youngsters, after all the heads are counted, help make up Miami's 1 million population. Is their future secure? What about facilities for them? Dr. Joe Hall, Dade Superintendent of Schools.
The growth that Dade County has already experienced in its school system has now produced a school population of better than 156,000, which makes us the 8th largest school system in the nation. During the last 2 years, our rate of increase has been about 6%, or between 8 and 9,000 pupils per year. If we take this 9,000 increase and project it for the next 5 years, that of course means we will increase some 45 to 50,000 pupils within that period of time, which will bring us over the 200,000 mark in our public schools. To house this increase over the 5-year period will require about $45 million. We will have coming in currently a little more than half enough money to provide for the building needs. We will have to make arrangements, however, for about $20 million from sources other than those that are coming in now on a pay-as-you-go basis.
And here again is Noah Tyler for Chase Federal.
A few weeks ago, when we took our film camera inside the Lincoln Road office of Chase Federal, we met many interesting people. Some of them have unusual occupations, such as Mrs. Hazel Brown.
You're Mrs.
Hazel Brown,
What is your occupation, Miss Brown?
locksmith.
A locksmith, lady locksmith.
Locksmith.
That's very interesting. And what brings you to Chase Federal today?
Open up another account.
Another one?
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the first one?
Well, we have 3. Now we open the 4th one.
How long have you been saving here?
About 14 years.
Any particular purpose in your saving?
Oh, yes, for my kids, schooling, what have you.
Oh, that's very important. Mrs. Brown, we don't have too much time to chat, but thank you for the few seconds you took out to
You're
stop.
very welcome.
Having a Chase savings account for each one of your children or each member of your family is a sound financial investment. Little folks grow quickly, and with them grow peace of mind when you know their future education is safe in the hands of a Chase savings account. Each account at Chase is insured safe by an agency of the federal government up to $10,000. And saving at Chase is convenient. It's as simple as dropping one of these save-by-mail envelopes into your corner mailbox. There's no fuss or taking time out from your busy day. Chase Federal will do the rest. So why don't you save as thousands save, and say as thousands save? For my money, it's 4% at Chase Federal.
We've seen the people. We know what they do, where they come from, and why they're here. Now let's consider where they are going. Newsman Fred Mook speaks to Richard Welsh, Director of the Dade County Development Department.
What benefits may be reaped in Miami because of the diversity of background of its population?
The diversity of backgrounds of our population provides us with diversity in skills. It provides us with diversity in customs, and it provides us with diversity in cultures. These 3 items go into making up a very large and almost unlimited supply of labor on the one hand, and a large and expanding market on the other hand.
Is Miami's population boom exhausted, or will more people be drawn here?
No, our population boom is by no means exhausted. The primary cause of the present boom is in the climate that is desirable and superior to any other in the United States. We will continue to have that sort of climate from now on. We will continue to have the kind of living conditions that all Americans want to enjoy.
Considering everything, what is Miami's future?
The Urban Land Institute has indicated that in the future, metropolitan Miami will be the center of a population distribution of about 6 million people. By that time, Southeast Florida will be among the 10 top populated metropolitan areas.
Miami, to say the least, is now a big city, and it will get bigger. And the people who make up Miami, by and large, are from other big city areas, and thus we have a ready-made cosmopolitan atmosphere present here. Not too many years ago, you may recall, it was humorously expressed that you could shoot off a cannon on Flagler Street in the summer months and not hit anybody. Well, those days are gone forever. And so we have mushroomed practically overnight into this complex urban area. And we must do some catching up also in a big hurry. The public utility companies have kept pace. The builders and private industry have met the challenge. It is in the providing of governmental or municipal services where most of the catching up needs to occur. And that is the big hope for metro government. Under metro, boundary lines are unimportant. People throughout the county must have adequate police and fire protection, must have an expressway system and good arterial streets. To balance the economy and provide jobs for the thousands of workers, we need to move forward in attracting the right type industries for this area. Our tax assessment program must be made more realistic than it is today. You've heard in this program some optimistic words concerning future growth and employment. You have heard a need for some $20 million in new school construction monies. In conclusion, the future for the million people of Miami looks bright, but there will have to be some sacrifices made. A city of this size cannot exist on sunshine and sand alone. We have to gear our thinking to our growth and provide for the things we need. How they did it back home, or an overwhelming allegiance to the old hometown, is not going to realistically help Miami meet these challenges. No matter where you came from, you are now a Miamian. What happens in your neighborhoods here and your city is the important thing. Become a part of what happens. Make your voice known. This city of a million faces then can meet the challenge which lies ahead. Good night.
Miami, city of a million faces. Another in a series of FYI programs for your information. Tonight's program produced by WTVJ News. Filmed and written by Fred Muth. Narrated by Ralph Rennick and directed by Martin Saxon.
That's about it for this edition of Rewind. Just time to remind you that Rewind features historical film and video from the Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. To see more from the Wolfson Archives collections, visit our website, wolfsonarchives.org. You can search the archives catalog and watch video online. And be sure to connect to our YouTube channel, where you will find hundreds of carefully curated clips, or link to the Wolfson Archives Facebook page to keep up with our busy calendar of historical happenings. Until next time, I'm Rene Ramos. Thanks for watching.